northwest of France, where the city of Le Mans is located. It's known for its famous car race that happens once every year. However, looking into the city's history, you'll find that it was home to a group of aristocrats and famous musician priests. When the Papin Sisters, Christine and Leah, arrived, they brought misfortune to the city by murdering the homeowner they worked for in 1933. The Papin family was troubled in Le Mans. Their mother was Clémence Deray, and their father was Gustave Papin. Despite rumors in the city that Clémence had an affair with her boss, Gustave loved her. In October 1901, when she became pregnant, he married her, and she gave birth to their daughter Emilia Papin in February 1902. Gustave always wondered if Clémence was still having an affair with her boss, deciding to get a job in another city to take Clémence away from the town. 2 years after Emilia's birth, Gustave announced they would move to a new city, but Clémence threatened suicide, increasing her husband's suspicions. Nonetheless, the couple moved and started a new life, but their relationship became increasingly volatile, with Gustave turning to alcohol. When Emilia turned 9, she was sent to the Catholic orphanage Bon Pasteur, and later reports revealed that her father had raped her. Emilia then joined the convent to become a nun, and Clémence gave birth to 2 more children, the Papin Sisters. Christine was born in 1905, after her mother gave her to her father's brother. She stayed with her aunt for 7 years before entering a Catholic orphanage. Christine wanted to join the convent, but her mother wouldn't allow it, deciding instead to work. She was a stronger and more outgoing personality than Leah. Her employers mentioned she was impudent. Leah, born in 1911, was the youngest sibling, less intelligent, shy, quiet, and introverted, growing up in an orphanage until she was 15. Christine and Leah started working in a house in Le Mans in 1926 for the Lancelin family, a retired lawyer, his wife, and their daughters. Christine worked as a cook, and Leah as a cleaner. Known to be good girls, they went to church but were known to be unsocial. They had a 2-hour break after lunch every day. But on the day of the crime, instead of going out, they decided to stay in their room. By 1933, Christine was 27, and Leah was 21. The homeowner returned that day to find the kitchen unclean. When she scolded her, Christine went to the kitchen, fetched a hammer and knife, and the sisters brutally and savagely beat the mother and daughter. When Mr. Lancelin returned home, the door was locked, and the house was completely dark except for a faint glow. It seemed like something sinister was happening. He immediately called the police, and upon entering the house, the police ascended the stairs to a sinister scene. The injuries were to the head and face, with legs torn by the knife and eyes displaced. The crime was exceedingly horrific, and the sisters were arrested. Christine acted and spoke as if there had been a sexual relationship with the homeowner, motivated by revenge. Recently, there have been many stories about maids, most of which revolve around child abuse, strange behaviors they exhibit, and more. To the point that anyone who gets a good worker, I won't say excellent, as no one is without flaws, is considered lucky. Anyway, what I wanted to talk about is our new maid and the frightening behaviors we truly suffered from. Everything started when we brought her to our house for the first time. At first, she appeared to be a diligent, active worker who never got tired or gave up, making us think we were lucky to have chosen her. But in reality, it was the complete opposite. She used to sleep in the room with my sister and me, as the maid's room was occupied during those days. And I'd rather not go into details. Anyway, on the first night, When I entered the room to sleep, she was supposed to be sleeping in her bed. Instead, she just sat on her bed, doing nothing but staring scarily at anyone who entered the room. This behavior continued for several days until I couldn't stand it anymore and stopped sleeping in the room. So, I moved to sleep in the living room where my mom was sleeping with my sister, who was temporarily helping her with her child. Gradually, my brothers also started sleeping with us in the living room, turning it into a large bedroom for all of us except my sister, who continued to sleep alone with the maid in the room, refusing to join us. Until one night, my sister was busy with her phone in bed, and the maid, as usual, sat on her bed doing nothing. Suddenly, she got up, went to the light switch, turned off the light, stood in her place, then turned it back on and went back to bed. That was enough for my sister to leave the room and sleep with us. But her behaviors didn't stop there. Every day, we would wake up to find her standing by the bedroom door, silently staring at each of us as we slept. My older sister, who has a fiery temperament, would always scold her harshly, ordering her to go to the bathroom to brush her teeth. Of course. And I won't lie, her yelling was so loud that it often woke me up in the morning. But what puzzled us was the maid's cold reaction. She would just stare at her coldly without moving, while my sister tried her best to argue, and the maid, if she moved, would open the bathroom door, stand beside it, and continue staring. This became a normal, daily routine for us. One day, she was sitting alone in the kitchen doing nothing, so my mom told her to go to sleep to get some rest. But all she did, as usual, was stare without doing anything, bearing in mind she had been silent the whole time she was with us, making us think she didn't speak Arabic. However, surprisingly and without warning, she spoke a full sentence. "I don't want to sleep. Why should I go to sleep? I'm not tired." In broken Arabic. Of course, we were shocked to hear her speak like this after being silent for so long without uttering a word. Her strange behaviors increased day by day. One day, while I was studying in my room, she suddenly entered with the vacuum cleaner to clean the room, but then stopped and just stared at me. Honestly, she stood there staring at me for about half an hour, and you might wonder why I didn't leave. Because I was scared of her. I imagined if I got up, she might suddenly attack and strangle me. I know staying in my place was silly, but she was truly frightening. Until my younger brother entered the room, I gathered my courage and quickly left, and he followed me. I peeked back to see her flipping through my books. I don't know what she found so fascinating in those books that always made me nauseous, and I also don't know why she was so interested in staring at me specifically. Even my family noticed this, and my mom advised me to stay as far away from her as possible. For instance, when I watched TV, she would stand at the door staring at me until I finished. When I studied, she would suddenly appear at the door to continue her creepy habit. And when I was with my mom in the kitchen, she would stand behind me staring. So I left the kitchen and sat in the living room. She followed me and leaned against the wall, continuing to stare at me. So, I moved to another chair to avoid her gaze, but she moved closer to keep staring. We were very bothered by her behaviors. On one occasion, my mom scolded her for not cleaning properly and ordered her to sweep the kitchen. My mom then came to us complaining about her cleaning, and we heard the sound of the vacuum cleaner dropping to the floor with force as if someone had thrown it angrily. We all looked towards the kitchen and saw her standing at the kitchen door, staring angrily at my mom. But we took her out. She would come back in a bad mood and refuse to eat anything. One day, she went out with my mom to my aunt's house and came back very upset. She closed her eyes and leaned her head against the wall. Anyway, was in the kitchen preparing a meal for myself when she entered and stood behind me, making a strange noise. I turned to ask her what was wrong, but she shook her head as if she hadn't said anything, repeating it 3 times. And each time I asked, she denied it. In the end, we couldn't bear it anymore and returned her to the agency. A few days later, we took her to a specialist who discovered she was possessed by a jinn. They called us back and informed us about it. I never imagined that the one staring at me all this time was possessed. And I never imagined that the one sleeping in the room with me was possessed, too. Who knows? Maybe she used to get up at 3 in the morning to stand and stare at us one by one all this time. Anyway, after some time, we hired another maid, but she was no better in terms of cleanliness. We've had enough of housemaids. My advice to you is to talk to the maids before selecting them at the agency and find out why they were let go from other houses if that's the case. That was the mistake we made, as we didn't even talk to them before hiring them. My name is Elizabeth, and I'm 13 years old from London. I have a sister named Victoria and a brother named William. Victoria is married and has 3 children, and William lives with us in our house. Since Victoria's home is very close to ours, I frequently visited her and stayed for a day or 2, sometimes going in the morning and returning in the evening. When I stayed over, Alice, her daughter, and I slept in one room, while the other 2 children, George and Harry, slept in the adjacent room, and Victoria and her husband in a room far from their children's rooms. I slept. I would wake up in the middle of the night feeling scared and terrified without any specific reason. And when I found nothing to worry about, I would go back to sleep. I was sleeping as usual during one of my visits to my sisters, and in the late hours of the night I felt anxious again and woke up. Then, wanting to go to the bathroom, I got out of bed slowly so as not to disturb Alice sleeping next to me, went and opened the bathroom door, and was faced with a spine-chilling scene. I saw a very pale man standing in the bathroom holding George's head in his hands. Yes, dear listener, it's true. It was George's head without his body. His body was lying next to the sink, covered in blood. When I saw this scene, my movements involuntarily froze, and I fell to the ground at the bathroom door, sitting on my knees with my eyes wide open and tears streaming down my cheeks, unable to speak or scream. Then, I saw this pale-faced man coming towards me saying, "Don't be scared." He repeated it with a calm demeanor, and when he was directly in front of me, I lost consciousness and didn't wake up until Victoria was waking me up in bed. I said to Victoria, "What's going on? What happened?" She replied, "What's wrong with you? I found you passed out on the floor in front of the bathroom." Hearing these words, I burst into tears and told her everything I saw. She assured me it must have been a nightmare and told me that George, whom I saw beheaded, was fine and still asleep in his room, which frightened me and made me cry again. I told her I wanted my mom and wanted to go home. Victoria said I could leave in the morning. I went back to bed but didn't sleep all night, my eyes wide open, looking around all the time. When morning came, I told Victoria I would leave today, and she said okay, as I wished. I had breakfast with her and her children, then dressed and left. Since Victoria lives on the top 7th floor of the building, there were obviously flights of stairs to descend. Some of these floors had their lights off, and others were lit. When I reached one of the dark floors, I took out my phone to use it as a flashlight on the stairs. When I turned on the screen, I found the pale-faced man standing next to me, his hand on my shoulder, repeating his phrase, "Don't be scared." A shiver of fear ran through me, and I ran as fast as I could. Fortunately, the first floor was lit, so I stopped to catch my breath from running down the stairs, opened the building door, and went home. But I didn't tell my mom and dad what happened, fearing they wouldn't believe me. Since this incident happened to me, I haven't visited Victoria for a while because this happened 2 months ago, and I swear it wasn't dreams or hallucinations. I swear on the dearest thing in my life that I'm not crazy, and it wasn't hallucinations. I leave the judgment to you, dear listeners. You're the ones who can help me, so tell me, what's the explanation for the events that happened to me? Something happened on my walk home. In the dark, your mind plays tricks on you. I know this. I know this from countless walks on dark winter nights, through dark alleyways, still fields and dead roads, the silence intruded on by your own footsteps, your mind creating monsters in the dark. This was not my mind playing tricks on me. I always walked the same route home from a friend's house. The bridge over the dual carriageway to the small sloping path that leads to a dirt alleyway. The long alleyway leads to 2 connected barren fields. These fields then lead to a paved alleyway. From there, it's just a few streets to my house. I've walked this way thousands of times. In the rain when the mud turns to slop. In the harsh heat of the sun. By myself and with others. It's ingrained so deeply it might as well be a part of me. This happened last night. And I really don't know what to make of it. I'd spent the day at a friend's house. I was meant to leave at 8:30, to make curfew at 9. But I didn't. I lost track of time and I didn't leave the house until around 9:45. Needless to say, my parents were pissed. I had a bunch of missed calls and angry texts. This led me to spend the first 5-10 minutes of the journey staring at my phone, apologizing. I'd already walked over the bridge and into the dirt alleyway when I put my phone into my pocket. Going from the sharp light of my phone to the dull dark of the night rendered me basically blind until my eyes adjusted. Even when they did, though, my vision was poor. I could see the basic silhouettes of the bushes on either side of me and how they curved to the right up ahead. The walk was slow as it had rained that day, and I had to step carefully to ensure I didn't slip. I had just grown used to the rhythmic thuds of my footfalls and the silence of the sleeping world when a short, sharp snap interrupted the silence behind me. My heart jolted a little, but I didn't stop. A branch, I said out loud to myself, as though speaking it would make it true. I walked a little faster than before, staring ahead until I entered the first field. My eyes stayed locked forward, on the gate that leads to the second field. There was a bush to the left of me, about 3 meters away. It spanned the entire length of the field. The rest of the field was surrounded by thick trees. In the dark, their silhouettes, nothing more than a colossal black mass. The field was empty, just like the fields always were. No animals, no trees. Empty. I walked, and I didn't look behind me, not even when I heard a rustling. Leaves, I said, even though I knew the sound was far too close to be the vegetation surrounding the field. I kept walking. My fear prevented me from doing anything but stare straight ahead and walk. If I moved my gaze, I might have seen it. If I ran, it might have given chase. So I stayed at a constant pace, and the rustling stayed too. Halfway through the field, it stopped. This almost startled me more than when it began. So much so that I stopped walking. Slowly, I craned my neck. Peering over my shoulder, I was met with nothing. Just the empty field behind me. I stood still for a moment. Then I once again began walking. I patted my pocket, feeling my phone. I took it out, feeling reassured in the limited light of the screen. I felt silly. Children are scared of the dark, not me. I switched my phone off, putting it back as I opened the gate to walk into the final field. I stared into the dark of the field, and the dark stared back. I froze. There was something in the field. A tree, I said, but I knew this tree wasn't here when I walked this way mere hours ago. It was tall, maybe 9 ft. It stood just off the center of the field. I had to walk past it to get to the gate. I couldn't tell much more than that. My eyes hadn't adjusted to the dark. I forced myself to begin walking. A tree, I whispered. Step, step, step. I walked closer. A tree. I said step, step. Step closer I drew. I didn't look at it directly. I was halfway through the field. "A tree," I stated. "Step. Step." It moved. A fast shift towards me. I ran, and I ran. And the slick mud made it difficult, but I didn't stop. I ran as fast as I could, but I knew it wouldn't be enough. I ran to the end of the field, but not out the gate. I stopped. I grabbed my phone from my pocket, and I turned around. I could see the dark blur storming towards me. I turned the flashlight on. It wasn't very bright, but it was enough. The field stood empty once more. I sprinted the rest of the way home. I haven't been anywhere near the field since, and I don't plan on ever going there in the future. I haven't slept for a few nights. I told my parents, but they think I made up some elaborate lie because I missed a curfew. I'm grounded, and no matter how much I swear it's the truth, they don't believe me. Last night I looked out of my window. Like always, I could see the distant lights of faraway roads and cars. But when I looked closer, I swear I could see a tree in my next-door neighbor's garden. I'd never seen it before. It was too large to be new. I stared at it for a long time. But I don't have a light powerful enough to illuminate that far. In the dark, it was just an undefined mass. I fell asleep at my window, staring into the darkness. It's daytime now, but I don't see the tree. I have no idea what's happening or what that thing in the field was.